All right, so I'm using this video to show y'all how to do the problems from section 2.1 in college algebra on your calculator. So I'll be sharing my calculator screen and how to put these answers into the MATLAB. Okay, so MATLAB is tricky when you put these answers in. So I'm going to share my screen and go to MATLAB to show you my problems. All right, so y'all should be seeing my homework screen. So this wants me to graph the equation by plotting the points. So the first thing I will tell you that to put it in the calculator, you have to have it solved for the y variable, just like this. You got to have y equals mx plus b form, okay? So since it's solved for the y, let me write this equation down. I got y equals 3 halves x plus 2. So I'm going to share my screen now for my calculator and show you how I would actually do that on the calculator. All right, so you should be seeing a calculator here. Now over here on the left side, it says key press history. That'll actually show you what keys I'm pressing to get to where I'm going. Also on my calculator over here, when I push a button that I'm going to use, it'll light it up red. So I want to go to y equals up here in the left corner of my calculator where my cursor is. Go to the y equals and press that. So when I press y equals, it brings me to a row of y equals over here. Y1 equals y2. Well, I can put equations into these by putting in the right side of my equation here, and then I got the power to use these graphing options down here, okay? So my equation was 3 halves x plus 2. So I'm going to show you two things you can do. First thing you can do, you can come down here and go 3 divided by 2. You can do a fraction like that. Or if you want it to look exactly like my problem was that I showed you, I'm going to clear that. And I'm going to show you another way to put in fractions. You can put in fractions by hitting alpha y equals, and that brings up a little list here. So we want n over d, which is numerator over denominator. So since 1 is highlighted, I hit enter on my calculator down here on the bottom. And when I hit enter, look what it did. It put a fraction there. So now I can put my 3 on the top, arrow down, and put my 2 on the bottom. Now, I'm going to arrow right here, arrow right, and I'm going to put in the X. Now, the easiest way to put an X in is by hitting this button where my cursor is. Right under the mode button, you got a button that's got an X, a T, and then other symbols with an N. That means when we're in the mode we're in for graphing, if you push that, it automatically will put an X up there. The other way to get an X would be hitting the green alpha button and then coming down here and hitting that STO button. See how it's got a little green X on mine? That means hit the green button and then the LN button or the STO button to get the X. All right, so I got my 3 halves X. Now I need to come down here and put my plus 2. So I now have 3 halves x plus 2. I want to see what the graph looks like. So I'm going to come down here, and y'all follow me. Where the y equals is, if you go all the way to the right, you got graph. Hit that graph button, and it graphs the line for you. So you now know what this is going to look like when you're done. So remember, we was looking at MATLAB. To graph this in MATLAB, since this is a straight line, we need 2 points. So to get points, I can hit the second button, and then the graph button. See how it says table above it and it's in blue? That means you hit the blue button and then the graph button, and it brings up a table here. So you can come in here and pick out some numbers you want to graph. So I'm going to arrow up and show you that I can go into the negative x values. So I need 2 numbers to graph. So I'm going to do this one. It's got -2, -1. So that's the x value -2. Y value -1. So I'm going to plot that point. And then another easy one I'm going to plot is if you go down 2, I'm going to plot this point, which is 0, 2. So I'm going to plot my second point, 0, 2. Now you can pick any points you want to, but if you pick this point right here, you're going to have to graph a fraction for the y value. This one has a fraction for the y value. 2, 5 would have been a good point. 3, 13 halves, not too good. 4, 8 would have been good. So as long as you find nice numbers to plot, you'll be good to go. So y'all, I have my 2 points I want to plot. So I'm going to go back to my MATLAB homework. And I'm going to click here where it says click to enlarge graph. And y'all, that's going to bring up a little graph here in the middle. So since you had a straight line, you need 2 points, which we got. So we're going to use the line tool and come over here and graph the 2 points. My first point was -2, -1. So I'm going to go left to -2 and then down to -1 and click that point. Now, if you notice up here in the top right part of the box, it shows -2, -1, which was the point I just plotted. My second point was 0, 2. So starting back in the middle, 0 is my x value, so I don't go nowhere. 2 was my y value, so I go up 2. So my second point, 0, 2, I'm going to click that. And now I have my straight line. So I click save. And then I come down here and say check answer. And then you hit the button to go to your next question. Now, if you wanted to, you could have done a similar question and done it again. But that would have been to your discretion. Now, notice this one. It's got 8y. So let me write this down. 8y plus 4x equals -8. So let's go back to the calculator. So let me go back to my calculator screen. Now, I'm going to clear my calculator and I'm going to quit this so I can go back home. So I hit the second button and then the mode button, and that lets me quit that screen. Now, I need to go to y equals, and I'm going to clear this out by hitting clear. So the trick on this one, since it was 8y plus 4x equals -8, I need to solve that one for the y. So I'm going to solve that real quick for the y by subtracting that 4x from each side. So that gives me 8y equals -4x minus 8. And then I got to divide them all by the 8 so that I get y equals a -4/8, which reduces to a -1/2 x minus 8/8, which is 1. So if you need help solving these for y, you got to email me and let me know, and I'll show you how I solve these for my y's on them, okay? So my equation is actually y equals -1/2. So I'm going to hit the alpha button in the y equals and then hit enter for option number 1. And I'm going to put in my negative. And notice you got to use the negative on the very bottom of the calculator there. And then that was -1 on top. Arrow down and put in your 2. That gives me -1/2. Come back up here and arrow right. You can't put the next part in while you're under the bottom of the fraction. You got to arrow over, put in your x. And then I said it was what, -1. So minus, you got to use the minus key over here and then 1. So the bottom negative in parentheses you use for a negative number. The button over here on the right side you use for actual subtraction. So I got -1/2 x minus 1. Now, if you wanted to, you could have put your negative out in the very front and then did your fraction. It don't matter as long as you got a negative there. So we're going to go down here and hit graph. Notice this one goes downhill left to right because that -1/2 slope means it goes downhill. So I know what the picture looks like. So to get my numbers, I'm going to hit second table. So let's see, that point ain't bad that I'm clicking on. So that says -2, 0. That's easy to plot. And then down here, I'll go down to this point so I can avoid the fraction. My second point will be 0, -1. So let's go back to MATLAB. So remember, that's a straight line again because it's in that form of y equals mx plus b. So let me go to my new share. All right, so here's my graph. So remember, click to enlarge graph. My 2 points were -2, 0. So come over here and grab the line tool. Go to -2, 0. That's on the x-axis, and click enter. So anytime the second number is 0, your first number will be on that line. And then I had 0, -1. So starting in the middle, go down to -1. Anytime the first number is 0, you're going to be on the y-axis. So y'all, that looks just like the picture we had. So you save it, come over here and check your answer. And then you go to your next question. So number 3, I got y equals 2x squared. So let's go to our calculator. All right, I'm going to clear that. And I'm going to go back to my y equals. And I'm going to clear out that equation. So this one was 2x squared. So I'll put in my 2. I come up here and get my x. Now to square it over here on the left side, you got an x with a 2 by it. That means that you're going to square the x if you punch that. So see how it squared it? Now, let me go back up there and I'm going to clear that. And the other way to do it, so let me go back. I'm going to clear this whole thing. The other way to do exponents, you can hit the 2, then the x. Over here under the clear button, you got an upside down V. We call that a caret. But if you hit it, notice how it jumps the little cursor up for your exponents. My exponent was a 2. Now, if I needed anything else to put in here, I would have to arrow over so that it brings my cursor back down. Now, y'all, if you got the older TI-83s or a really old TI-84, when you push this caret key over here, it'll put an arrow up here with a parentheses, put your 2 in parentheses, and then close them, and it's how you would do your exponents. But if you got the 84s, pluses, and the CEs, they would make your exponents like mine are doing, okay? So I got my 2x squared in here, so I come down here and hit graph. Notice it made my graph of a parabola. So anytime you got an x squared graph, you get what we call a parabola. Now, when we graph this in MATLAB, I'm going to show you the tool needs 3 points. And the first point you have to use when you plot it in MATLAB is what we call the vertex, and that's going to be the minimum point. Or if the graph was going the other way, it would be the maximum point. And the first point you have, you're going to pick it, and then you'll notice on each side of that point you got symmetry. This is like at 1, 1. This would be at -1, 1. All the values that this one has for the positive 2s, it has for the negative 2s. It's what we call symmetric. So I'm going to go to second graph to look at my values. So let me go up a little bit more. So notice right here where the x value is 0, I got a y value of 0. And then on either side, I got a 2 and a positive 2. I got a positive 8 here, positive 8 at here. So all the values for my negative numbers are the same values for their opposites. Other than at 0, 0, there's only 1 point with a 0. So that would be the first point of plotting MATLAB. So I would write down my 0, 0 for my first point to plot. And then I would go on the right side. I would pick that 1, 2. And then my last point, I have to get the other side. So I would pick -1, 2. So for your parabolas, you need 3 points. You need your vertex and then 1 point on either side. And the easiest points are always going to be the ones that are right by that vertex, okay? So now I got my 3 points. So let's go to MATLAB. Now, click to enlarge graph. Now, we know which tool we're going to use. We're going to use this parabola tool. And notice it has 3 dots on it, so that's why we wanted 3 points to plot. So I'm going to click on that. My first point was 0, 0, which is right there in the origin, so I click enter. My second point was 1, 2. So I'm going to go right 1 and up 2 and click. So far it made a straight line, but watch this. My last point was negative 1, 2. So I'm going to go over here to negative 1 and up to 2 and click. So notice, that's the same graph as we had on our calculator. So we would save that, check our answer, and move on. All right, so, this would be the same thing. Y equals x squared plus 3. Let's go to our calculator. Y equals x squared plus 3. All right, so calculator, share that. Let's go back to y equals and clear that out. So, x squared plus 3. So I would hit my x. To square it, I can use the caret key, but if you want to be quicker, just hit that x squared button on the left side. It squares it automatically for you, and then you don't have to bring the cursor back down. If you use the caret, it'll put your 2 up here, but it keeps it highlighted up here, so you would actually have to use that arrow to come back down. All right, the rest of my problem was plus 3. So I got x squared plus 3. I'm going to graph it. But remember, since that's the x squared, we know it's going to be a parabola again. The only difference, a parabola looks like it went up about 3 units, and that's what that plus 3 at the end did. It moved my parabola up 3 units. So I need 3 points. So remember, I need to get that vertex point first. And usually, if you notice, that vertex is always going to be where the x value is 0. So my first point would be 0, 3. Remember, I need 3 points, so I'd come to the right side and get my 1, 4. And then I'd go to the left side and get me a negative 1, 4. So 3 points. We would go back to MATLAB. So now we got that. We click the enlarge graph. We need our 3-point parabola tool for this. We hit enter. And the first point was 0, 3. So start at 0 and go up 3 in your y-axis and hit enter. And then I had 1, 4. So let's see, I go right 1 and up 4, click enter. And then my last point was negative 1, up 4, hit enter. So that looks like the parabola we had on our calculator. We hit enter and then move to the next question. So y'all, these aren't bad. If you're weak at math, this calculator will definitely help you out. All right, so this one has y equals negative 3 divided by x. So they gave us a picture of 4. So all they want us to do on this problem is graph it on the calculator, or you can do it by hand, but it's tricky by hand because you got to get a lot of points on this one. But the easiest thing, go to your calculator. We got y equals negative 3 divided by x. And it's going to be one of these 4 pictures, okay? But I can tell you what, it ain't going to be a straight line. So it's going to be either C or D. So let's go see what that calculator gives us. So go to y equals. Since it's already solved for y, we clear that out. Now, if you want it to look exactly like that, hit the negative button first, because they got the negative button. And then hit alpha y equals. And since one's highlighted, we hit enter. That brings us up in fraction. On top, we had a 3. Then we're going to arrow down and hit the X. And then if you want to, you can arrow right to bring that cursor back up. But my problem was negative 3 divided by X. And really, I don't have to have no points to plot this one. I just need to know what it looks like. They're not making me graph it. They're just making me pick a picture, okay? So we hit graph. So notice on the left side, it goes up. And on the right side, it comes from the negative numbers, but it goes up. So it's uphill both ways, okay? So let's see which picture looked like that. And later on, you're going to learn that this is called a vertical asymptote, but you don't have to know that no time soon, okay? So let's go to the MATLAB. So mine went uphill to the left, and then it came from these negative numbers, went uphill. So I would definitely pick C. Notice D goes downhill and downhill. Mine both went sort of uphill, okay? So check that answer and Next question. All right, this one has absolute value. So this is y equals absolute value of x plus 4. Okay, so when we graph this, I'm going to show you, I'm going to click the enlarge graph. This is absolute value. When I'm done with absolute value, it's going to look like a V. Now notice, this has 2 points on it. It's got a point at the very bottom of the vertex, and then it's got a point on either side. So this we need 2 points on since it's got 2 points on that tool, okay? So let's go to our calculator. So go to y equals and clear it. Now, to get absolute value, come down here on the left side where it says math, hit that math button. That brings up a list. What we want to do is arrow to the right so that not math is highlighted, but number is highlighted. So I arrow right 1 unit, and look at that. It says absolute value. So since it's highlighted number 1, you hit enter. And ABS means absolute value. So that brings up the absolute value bars on the new calculators. Now, once again, if you got an older calculator, it don't put the bars up there. It'll put ABS on the screen with a parentheses. And then what you would do is put your numbers inside the parentheses and then close the parentheses. So that's only on my older calculators, okay? So this one, I would hit my XT button here, get my X, come down here and put my plus, and then put my 4. And if you wanted to, you could arrow right and get outside of them bars. But that is now the absolute value of x plus 4. I'm going to hit graph. So notice, this did make a V graph. So my first point has to be this point that's on the x-axis. So that's going to have a y value of 0. So your first point will have a y value of 0. So let's go to second graph and get my table. So let's see. None of these have a y value of 0, but notice they're getting smaller going up. So let's arrow up and get more negative numbers. Oh, there's my y value of 0. So my first point I'm going to plot is going to be at the -4, 0. So my first point is -4, 0. And then remember, I only needed one more point. So I'm going to come down here and plot -3, 1. If you wanted to, and you wanted to plot a positive number, you could have came down here and you could have plotted 0, 4 for your second point, 1, 5 for your second point. You could have plotted any of these negative numbers for your second point. The only stipulation is your first point has to be the one that has the y value of 0, and that point for me was at 0. Notice if you keep going up on these x's, this graph is symmetric. At -4, 0 is your vertex, and then you got a 1 on both sides, a 2 after that, and then you would have 3s and 4s and so on. So it's still symmetric also. So let's go back to MATLAB. So we already picked our tool, so we're going to put our vertex first, which was that -4, 0, which was the point on the x-axis. So I got -4, 0, and then I said my next point would be -3 here and up 1. See, this graph, it drew both sides for me, so they're nice on this one, okay? The parabola, they actually made you use all 3, right? So click save, hit enter for your answer, and move to the next one. So hopefully you are getting used to this. This is y equals x to the 3rd minus 3. And y'all, my main idea with this is just to get you good on these calculators. And I think actually with me using this calculator version, other than me recording my calculator on my hover cam, you're seeing all the buttons I'm pushing over here. As I go, these buttons are showing you everything I'm doing. Remember? Okay. So we hit y equals and we cleared it. So this one was an x to the 3rd. So I'm going to hit the x. Now, whether you got old calculator, new calculator, to do this one, you actually do got to use that caret key, which is that upside down looking V key over here under the clear button. Notice which one's red for me now on the screen. That's my caret key. And then I'm going to come down here and put my 3. Now remember, the older calculators will put the caret with a parenthesis, put your 3, and close y'all's parentheses, okay? On this one, I'm going to arrow right. You got to bring that cursor back down. And then the rest of this was -3. So come over here and get your subtraction for your minus, and then your 3. I will tell you this, if you use this negative and then put -3, it won't be subtracting no more, it'll be multiplying. That's why they're putting it in parentheses, okay? Do not use that to subtract. All right, so it's x to the third minus 3. I'm going to go to the graph. Now, this is a cube. In MathLab, to draw a cube, you're going to use the 4-point cubic tool, which you need 4 points, okay? So we're going to have to find 4 points. So let's hit second graph to get that table. Now, well, I don't want big numbers. So the smallest y values I got are these 4 points starting at -1, and then 0, 1, and 2. Those are small numbers. The rest of these got big y values, -1, 24, 61, -30, and they get really big. So I want the smallest points I can plot. So my first point I'm going to cursor down will be -1, -4. Next, I would probably plot 0, -3. Then I would go down to 1, -2. So those numbers are pretty small. And then 2, 5. It's because that cubic, right? When you put a number in for that x and you cube it, those numbers can get big pretty quick. Okay. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So that's why some of these are already getting up into the -30s. 4 times 4 times 4 is -64. Subtract 3 makes -67, right? So let's look at that graph again. Notice how it goes sort of uphill and it's sort of curvy. So now, MathLab, here we come. All right, I'm going to share this. Click to enlarge graph. So notice it was a swirly graph, and right here, if you notice, is our 4-point cubic tool. So we need 4 points. Now, order don't matter, and it don't matter what 4 points you pick. So I'm just going to go how I had them in order. I had -1, -4, so plot that. Then I had 0, -3. Then I had 1, -2. And then I had 2, 5. See, it sort of curves it when you put that last point in, okay? So that looks like what we had on the calculator. Save that. And then you check your answer. So y'all, we got one more to go, and then I'll let you off this video. So let's go, I checked that. So, okay, number 8 is another x squared graph. This is y equals x squared minus 5. So let's go to the calculator. All right, here's my calculator. Go to y equals and clear that. All right, so x squared, I could hit x. I'm going to hit the x squared button over here to square it, and keeps my cursor down. And then I come over here, get my subtraction, my minus, and then I had a 5. So we're going to graph that by hitting the graph button. So we know it's going to be a parabola, but this time it sort of brought it down. So what that -5 does, the x squareds usually want to sit at this 0, 0, but when you subtract 5 from the end, it sort of brings it downhill 5 units. So that's why this one went down. The one I did a while ago was plus, so it sort of brought it up. So the first point's got to be that vertex, which is going to have an x value of 0 again, right? So go to second graph and get my table. So my x value is 0, gives me 0, -5. So let me show y'all where I'm at. I'm down here on the x value of 0, and I get a y value -5. On either side, I'm going to pick the point, which is 1, -4. And then I'll plot the other side up here. I'm going to plot -1, -4. Okay, so we got our 3 points. Where am I at? We're going back to our screen. Share my MathLab screen. So this is the last one we got a graph. So click to enlarge that graph. My first point was 0, -5. Now remember, this is a 3-point cubic, okay? It's always a parabola when you got an x squared graph, and we call them quadratics. So click that. My first point was 0, -5. So remember, it's on the y-axis. Second point was 1. So go right 1 and down to -4. My third point, start at 0, was -1, -4. Click that. So now it looks like the parabola I had a while ago. Notice my vertex started at 0, came down 5. Okay, so I'm going to save that and then check our answer. All right, y'all done with that. So that is how I would do the first set of homework problems in MATLAB, okay? I can do them all on my calculator like we just did. And if you want to get good at that, go back to my video and look at the buttons that are lighting up while I'm punching through that, okay? And then it puts my key history on that left side for you. So get good at that calculator because it's going to save your life in this class. All right, I'm going to stop this recording and get this ready to send out. Good luck, y'all.